Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a breathtaking story from the front lines of the Russia-Ukraine war, one that reads like a scene out of a military thriller. For weeks, Russian forces believed they had set the perfect trap by luring Ukrainian troops toward a strategically vital bridge. But what unfolded next shocked even the most hardened commanders. Instead of falling into the snare, Ukraine turned the tables, waited patiently, and triggered an ambush so precise that it shattered Russia's advance in a single night. This was not just a battle. It was a masterclass in deception and timing. The bridge in question was more than just steel and concrete. It was a lifeline, connecting a critical supply route that Russia needed to move artillery, fuel and reinforcements to its forward units. Moscow's generals, confident in their plan, deliberately allowed rumors of a weakly defended crossing to spread, hoping to draw Ukrainian forces into a choke point where artillery batteries and hidden troops lay waiting. To them, it was the perfect scenario, one push from Ukraine, and they would collapse under a storm of fire. But Ukraine had learned the hard way in earlier stages of the war never to take Russian bait at face value. Intelligence officers intercepted chatter. Drone surveillance confirmed unusual concentrations of Russian forces near the bridge, and the pattern of troop movements screamed trap. Instead of charging forward, Ukraine's commanders held their men back and quietly set their own plan into motion. The hunter would become the hunted. For days, Ukrainian scouts observed every inch of the battlefield. They mapped artillery placements, tracked convoys, and even monitored shifts in Russian troop rotations. The bridge became a stage, and Ukraine was preparing to choreograph its most daring play yet. Engineers secretly rigged hidden explosives along alternate crossing routes, while artillery units adjusted their coordinates with mathematical precision. The trap within the trap was almost ready. When Russia finally moved, the night exploded with chaos. Columns of tanks and armored vehicles thundered toward the bridge, convinced they had lured Ukraine into the open. Spotters reported little resistance, and commanders ordered their troops forward with confidence. But as the first vehicles rolled across, the sky lit up. Not from Russian artillery, but from Ukrainian fire raining down in perfect unison. Missiles, mortars and drone strikes converged on the crossing, tearing into the column with devastating accuracy. Within minutes, the bridge itself was engulfed in flames. Ukrainian artillery slammed the approaches, cutting off escape, while drones swooped down to pick off stragglers. Russian troops, realizing too late that they had been led into a kill zone, scrambled for cover as their vehicles exploded one by one. What was meant to be a trap for Ukraine had turned into a massacre for Russia. On the Ukrainian side, cheers erupted as live feeds from drones confirmed the scale of the destruction. Commanders exchanged brief nods of satisfaction. Months of patience and planning had paid off in spectacular fashion. Soldiers who had braced for a bloody crossing instead watched their enemy collapse in fire and confusion. For once, the element of surprise belonged entirely to them. In Moscow, the aftermath was devastating. Reports of the ambush reached the Kremlin quickly, and the reaction was furious. The bridge, once hailed as a secure artery of the war effort, had become a graveyard of steel. Propagandists scrambled to spin the disaster, but satellite images of burning wreckage spoke louder than any official statement. Russia's trap had not only failed, it had backfired with catastrophic consequences. Across Ukraine, news of the ambush spread like wildfire. Civilians shared videos of the strike with pride. Soldiers on other fronts found their morale boosted, and the story of the bridge became a symbol of Ukrainian cunning and resilience. In villages scarred by months of shelling, people whispered, "We outsmarted them," finding comfort in knowing their defenders could match Russia's power with brains as well as bravery. International analysts hailed the ambush as a turning point in tactical warfare. Commentators marveled at Ukraine's ability to read, anticipate, and reverse Russia's strategy. What was supposed to be a devastating blow against Ukraine instead became a headline that reverberated across the world. Not only could Ukraine resist, but it could also outthink one of the most powerful militaries on Earth. The bridge, once a symbol of Russia's control, now stood as a reminder of its vulnerability. The days that followed the ambush were filled with both celebration and calculation. Ukraine had won a stunning victory, but its commanders knew Russia would retaliate with fury. The destroyed bridge cut deep into Russian logistics, forcing Moscow to reroute supplies through longer, riskier paths. This slowed operations on several fronts, buying Ukraine valuable breathing space. But Ukrainian intelligence also warned that Russia's high command would likely throw everything it had into regaining the upper hand. The ambush was more than a tactical blow. It was a humiliation, and humiliations demanded answers. As Russia scrambled to recover, Ukrainian media showcased the ambush as a symbol of ingenuity. Footage of drones circling the burning bridge was replayed across social platforms, becoming viral clips that fueled morale both domestically and abroad. Civilians who had once lived in fear now felt pride, pointing to the destroyed Russian convoys as proof that Ukraine wasn't just surviving, it was fighting smart. Volunteers signed up in greater numbers, convinced that with enough support, the tide of the war could be turned decisively. Meanwhile, Russia's losses went beyond equipment. Reports emerged that several high-ranking officers had been at the site to oversee the trap. At least 2 were confirmed killed in the ambush, their deaths shaking Moscow's already fragile command structure. The Kremlin, desperate to maintain control, downplayed the incident, but whispers within the Russian ranks told a different story. Morale was sinking fast, and doubts about leadership were spreading like wildfire. Soldiers who thought they were springing a clever plan now realized they had been the pawns in someone else's miscalculation. Ukraine, for its part, wasted no time capitalizing on the victory. Within days, precision strikes hit Russian depots and convoys attempting to reroute around the destroyed bridge. Each attack compounded the logistical nightmare, leaving Russian troops stranded without fuel or ammunition. Analysts noted how Ukraine's military had evolved. No longer reacting passively, it was now dictating the tempo of war, forcing Russia to constantly play catch-up. The ambush was not just a battle, it was a message. Internationally, the world took notice. Western allies praised the ambush as a demonstration of Ukraine's growing sophistication and effectiveness. Military experts from NATO studied the operation closely, noting how deception, timing, and technology had converged in a way few had predicted. New shipments of advanced weaponry were quickly approved, as confidence grew that Ukraine could wield them with devastating effect. For Kyiv, the bridge victory didn't just weaken Russia. It unlocked deeper global support, but within Ukraine, the cost of the ambush was not forgotten. Soldiers who executed the strike recalled the tension, the risk, and the knowledge that one wrong move could have meant disaster. Some units sustained casualties even in victory, and their sacrifices were honored in solemn ceremonies. Families lit candles in churches, grateful that the ambush had succeeded, but reminded of the fragility of life on the front lines. The bridge may have collapsed in fire, but the human stories behind it carried weight far beyond the battlefield. On the Russian side, retaliation came swiftly. Missiles rained down on Ukrainian towns in a wave of anger-driven strikes, hitting civilian areas far from the front lines. Russia sought to remind Ukraine that victories came with consequences, but instead the attacks only hardened Ukrainian resolve. Each crater in the street, each shattered home, only deepened the determination to fight back. The ambush had proven that Ukraine could outthink Russia, and now the people demanded more. As weeks turned into months, the bridge ambush was remembered not just as a tactical win, but as a psychological turning point. Ukrainian soldiers often referenced it in conversations, using it as motivation before heading into new battles. Commanders used it in briefings, reminding troops that patience and strategy could topple even the most elaborate enemy plans. For many, it was a sign that the war, while brutal, was winnable. In Moscow, the ambush remained a sore wound. Critics within Russia questioned the leadership's arrogance, asking how such a trap could be so disastrously reversed. Propagandists tried to bury the story, but images of burning Russian armor kept surfacing online, impossible to suppress. The bridge, once envisioned as a symbol of control, had become a scar of failure. Russia's generals, once confident of swift domination, now faced the reality of a prolonged war they could no longer predict or fully control. And so, the legacy of that night endured. What had begun as a deadly snare for Ukraine became a masterstroke of tactical brilliance. By waiting, watching and striking at the perfect moment, Ukraine turned one of Russia's strongest positions into one of its most humiliating defeats. It was proof that courage, intelligence and timing could reshape a battlefield, and a reminder to the world that in this war, nothing was ever as simple as it seemed.